Oh, hello everybody. We're here for another week of three questions this time with Robbie Sommerville. Hello, Robbie. How are you?
Hey, I'm well, thanks, James. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you. So, for those of you who don't know Robbie, he is the Managing Director and Global Head of Corporate Communications for Standard Chartered. Thanks for being here. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I'm excited.
So, you've hopefully seen a couple of these by now.
How?
So we're going to ask you three questions. We'll go straight into it. The first question is that dreaded party question of, wait, so what do you actually do?
Yeah, and it comes up so often, and I think well, good reason you asked this question is it's actually pretty hard to answer, and I would argue that probably my answer to it has changed quite a bit over the years. So yeah, I mean, usually my simplest answer is I help companies, organizations communicate with audiences and figure out what that looks like, what that means, how that works, and try and give a little bit of kudos to, the advisory and kind of counsel offering that we give to stakeholders as well. But usually people's perception is either ab fab, which is quite amusing, and the kind of PR. If you give the PR answer, they're like, so that's kind of what you do, but that's certainly not the case.
Stuff. And yeah, no, I think that's the thing. The function has evolved so much.
Completely.
It's no longer just media relations or PR, or it's very much about kind of connecting the business to its purpose and helping them communicate that externally.
Absolutely. And I think the other part is always being the mirror. Like you're meant to be the mirror of the audience back into those organizations. So you're really trying to hold up what does this audience look for? What do they crave? What do they think about? And you're having to do that for very different personalities or very different personas from the different audiences you serve. So I think being able to do that really, really well is probably the biggest challenge. But yeah, getting to explain that at dinner conversation is probably a little bit lighter. And it really varies by industry as well. So they're like, so what does that mean when it's a bank or an international like financial services group? Or they have instant kind of perspectives around it. So the mirror kind of concept of being that audience and playing it back in, I think really helps explain it.
Slightly off piece, but has there been a common thread in terms of what is the biggest influence on where corporate communication sits and how it's seen within the organizations you've worked with throughout your career?
I wouldn't say there's a single thread. I think, like lots of other functions, I think corporate communications has gone through cyclical kind of trends. Sometimes you find particular sectors stick to that a little bit more. So you'll see a centralization kind of role, and therefore, things become a little bit more command and control in terms of positioning and messaging and that reputation management. I think now there's probably a case for us to be doing a more diversified job in terms of how we engage with audiences. The needs and asks and expectations are shifting. I think the external world has shifted rapidly, and corporates have to work really hard to keep up. And so, in particular, at a global level, that's pretty challenging. Like it's really good to be a sounding board. And what I think is interesting, irrespective of the organizations I've worked for, comms straddles more functions and more visibility of the business than many other functions do. And so for that reason, it's a pretty privileged position to sit in. But I think therefore the expectation sometimes on the function is also extraordinarily high.
Well, thank you for that. That's a couple of really good answers there. You've got one of those CVs that lots of people would aspire to. When you look at the names and the sheer scale of the organizations you've worked with throughout your career, looking back then, is there a key or singular piece of advice you'd give to your more junior self? I think we're phrasing it that way.
Yeah. My more junior self, try stuff more and figure out things that you probably do or don't like quicker. I think there's a bit of an instinct point which you can sometimes force yourself to work through because you think actually this is necessary for my career. This will help me get to a particular place or at a particular time. The other part is probably just kindness to yourself. It sounds a bit twee, but I do think there's an expectation of where you should or need to be at various points in time. My career as everyone's is a kind of catalogue of decisions made, sometimes by me, sometimes by organizations. And I think, yeah, being as open to that as you can possibly be. But I think trust your instincts. You know when things don't quite sit right. And some of the bigger decisions I've probably made in my career have been people led. It's been either a decision to go towards or away from something because of relationships and dynamics. And I think it's really important to do that because, I think you know yourself pretty well. You might doubt yourself, you might challenge yourself, particularly when you've got less experience. But the instinct point, I think, is a healthy thing to have in mind. So yeah, my younger self, I would have encouraged that probably a little bit more. I think the other part is throw the ladder down as well. There's some really interesting dynamics I think I've observed probably as I've gotten a little bit older. I'm not that I'm hopefully that old, but as I'm getting older, I definitely see the influence and power you can have on other people's careers and how you shape them, even if you think it's a relatively minor interaction,
Sure.
and things that you probably don't even think about can have, game-changing moments for people. So don't underestimate that, even at a relatively junior part of your career.
It's a really good point. It's often something that seems like nothing to you, but it's really meaningful to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's just time, isn't it? A lot of the time, it's being willing to give people a bit of time.
For
I think
sure.
that's such a lovely point around the kind of idea that if you're too focused on what other people are doing and what your career path should look like, you sometimes just ignore the fact that you're making yourself miserable unnecessarily. If you build your career on the things that you're good at, then yeah, you're going to be in a good place.
And I think it's about having that at a core. You can do things on the periphery that can be
Yeah,
complementary to what you're doing, but I think have a core that you feel good in, you feel confident and comfortable in.
great. Fantastic. So the third question, and I think my favorite of the three, is if you weren't in the world of corporate communications, what would you be doing?
I thought quite long and hard about this, and I saw some of the other episodes where people have some pretty cool answers to this. My upbringing and background was more in the arts, so I actually trained as a dancer when I was much younger. It was something that I kind of had an inflection point in, life. Do you go down corporate life, stability, money, the things that come with that, or do you go
Yeah.
down the kind of creative arts pursuits? I would have probably long ago had to retire as a dancer, so I hopefully would have been in some kind of choreography or arts type of career. But yeah, knowing that you would have been finished in your kind of mid to late 30s is also quite
Yeah.
daunting. So I think that was the other part that made me change it. But if I wasn't doing this, that's definitely the world I would love to be in. I think there's a lot to be said, particularly now, for the value of creativity and the arts, and what that means in terms of things like kind of reaching audiences, reaching people, reminding us of our humanity at a time when it feels pretty stressful out there. So yeah, it's definitely a world I admire and I love to kind of get back into when I can. So that would probably be my answer.
Love that. Yeah, I think that's great. And you're right. It's when things get difficult, leaning on the arts in whichever way you want to lean on the arts, because that's important. I think is so valuable.
And I think as we look at things like AI trends and stuff that can be done and really much more efficient, like where we can play as humans, where we can have that genuine creativity and hopefully explore still some things new for the first time, I think is really, really important. So my hope is with all of those trends that you start to see the genuine human behaviors, human kind of led opportunities start to emerge a little bit more.
Yeah, fantastic, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Robbie.
No problem at all. Thanks, James.